What if the most powerful people on Earth were connected to one of the biggest scandals in history, and millions of documents just revealed the truth? This is the Epstein Files. The rise and fall of Jeffrey Epstein, a timeline of infamy. The story of Jeffrey Epstein is one that still haunts the world. Years after his arrest and his controversial death in 2019, the shadow of his crimes and the web of his connections continue to spark global outrage and demand for answers. Epstein, a financier with no clear source of wealth, built a life of extravagant luxury. Mansions in Manhattan, a sprawling estate in Palm Beach, a ranch in New Mexico, and most notoriously, a private island in the Caribbean. His network included some of the most powerful people on Earth, and his downfall revealed a system where privilege, secrecy, and influence seemed to operate above the law. The 2008 plea deal, a controversial escape from justice. In 2008, Epstein was arrested in Florida on charges of soliciting prostitution from a minor. The case should have sent him to prison for life. Instead, he struck a plea deal so lenient it shocked the nation. He pleaded guilty to a single-state charge, served just 13 months in a county jail with work release privileges, and registered as a sex offender. The deal, brokered by then U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta, allowed Epstein to avoid federal prosecution and protected his co-conspirators from investigation. The leniency of the agreement raised immediate questions. How did a man accused of such heinous crimes receive what amounted to a slap on the wrist? Who intervened on his behalf? And why were so many powerful figures seemingly untouchable? The deal also included a highly unusual provision: immunity for any potential co-conspirators, effectively shielding anyone involved in Epstein's alleged crimes from prosecution. This clause would later become a focal point of legal battles and public fury, as survivors and their advocates argued that justice had been denied, not just for Epstein, but for those who enabled him. The 2019 arrest and mysterious death, a case reopened. More than a decade later, in July 2019, Epstein was arrested again, this time on federal charges of sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy. The indictment alleged that Epstein had operated a vast network of underage girls, some as young as 14, who were recruited, groomed, and abused at his properties. The arrest sent shockwaves through the world, reigniting public interest in his case and the powerful figures connected to him. But just over a month later, on August 10, 2019, Epstein was found dead in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan. The official ruling was suicide by hanging. Yet the circumstances surrounding his death were riddled with inconsistencies. Guards failed to check on him for hours, surveillance cameras malfunctioned, and his cellmate had been transferred out the day before. Conspiracy theories exploded online, with many refusing to believe that Epstein, who had so much damaging information on so many influential people, could have taken his own life. The mystery of his death only deepened the public suspicion that the full truth was being hidden. The Epstein Files Transparency Act, a floodgate of secrets. For years, rumors swirled about the extent of Epstein's network and the identities of those involved. Then in late 2025 and into early 2026, the phrase Epstein Files shifted from speculation to reality. Lawmakers, responding to relentless public pressure, passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act, a bipartisan effort forcing the Department of Justice to release millions of pages of documents related to Epstein's crimes, his 2008 plea deal, and the 2019 federal case. The release was unprecedented. Emails, flight logs, hotel records, banking transactions, contact lists, testimony transcripts, internal investigative notes, estate photos, seized hard drives holding over 300 gigabytes of data, and even Epstein's infamous Black Book of contacts. While portions were redacted to protect victims and ongoing investigations, what emerged was a staggering portrait of a man who operated with impunity, surrounded by a global elite. Little St. James Island, the epicenter of the scandal. One of the most infamous locations in the Epstein saga was Little St. James Island, a privately owned patch of land in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Dubbed the Island, it became Epstein's secretive base of operations, a place where, according to victim testimony and legal filings, numerous high-profile guests arrived on his private jets, allegedly engaging in activities that included the exploitation and abuse of underage girls. Flight logs show jets landing from Miami, New York, and other cities, often late at night with glamorous guest lists. Victim statements described lavish parties and gatherings where visitors were offered tours of the estate, meals prepared by private chefs, and entertainment that, for many, turned into deep trauma. Some survivors recounted meeting powerful politicians, business leaders, and celebrities who arrived on Epstein's aircraft, sometimes referred to as the Lolita Express, and later traveled with him to the island. The island was not just a retreat, it was a symbol of Epstein's power and the impunity with which he operated. The files reveal that this was not an isolated operation, but part of a sprawling international network that stretched from the Caribbean to Europe, the Middle East, and beyond. The names in the files: power, privilege, and public outrage. The Epstein Files include concrete evidence, not rumors, that Epstein cultivated connections with some of the most powerful individuals in the world. Among the names appearing in the documents are former U.S. Presidents Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, tech magnates Elon Musk and Bill Gates, Prince Andrew of the British royal family, former Harvard President Larry Summers, political strategist Steve Bannon, and even music legend Michael Jackson. Donald Trump's name appears hundreds of times in the released documents, including flight manifests and emails. Bill Clinton's name is also prominent, with flight logs showing multiple trips on Epstein's private jet. Prince Andrew's association with Epstein has been well documented, leading to his own legal troubles and public disgrace. Other figures like Elon Musk and Bill Gates appear in contact lists or correspondence, though the nature of their interactions varies. It is crucial to clarify: being mentioned in the Epstein Files does not prove participation in criminal behavior. Many of the names appear in neutral or social contexts, meetings, events, or correspondence that may have been innocuous. However, the frequency and context of these mentions have fueled public outrage and intense speculation. The files show that Epstein maintained a vast social network of elites, and the sheer volume of high-profile connections has raised questions about how far the network extended and who may have turned a blind eye. Survivor testimony: the human cost of the scandal. Beyond the headlines and the high-profile names, the Epstein Files contain harrowing accounts from survivors. Hundreds of pages of victim testimony describe a pattern of grooming, recruitment, and exploitation that began when the victims were minors. Many were lured under the pretense of massage therapy, modeling opportunities, or social introductions, only to find themselves trapped in a system that blended allure with manipulation. Survivors recount feeling controlled, isolated, and unable to escape. Their stories are not just footnotes in a legal document, they are the heart of the scandal, a reminder of the real human cost behind the sensational headlines. The files also include financial records showing how Epstein used his company's trusts and shell accounts to move money, sustain his operations, and pay staff and associates, further illustrating the scale and sophistication of his network. Public reaction, accountability, conspiracy, and the search for truth. The release of the Epstein Files has triggered a global firestorm of reactions, falling into three broad camps. First, there are those demanding full accountability. They argue that the files show evidence of privilege protecting the powerful, and that the justice system has repeatedly failed survivors. For them, the release is a step toward transparency, but not nearly enough. Too many documents remain redacted, too many questions unanswered. Second, fact-checkers, legal experts, and journalists urge caution. They stress that the files contain both relevant material and innocuous mentions, and that many viral lists circulating online are misleading or erroneous because they lack context. Not every name in the documents equals guilt, and not every connection implies complicity. Third, there are the conspiracy theories, wild, unfounded claims about shadow governments, secret societies, and hidden cabals controlling world systems. While some online forums amplify these ideas with sensationalism, Many such theories have been debunked or shown to be baseless. Yet the persistence of these narratives speaks to the public's deep distrust of institutions and the belief that the full truth is still being hidden. The fight for justice, legal battles, and legislative reforms. The release of the Epstein Files has galvanized survivors and their advocates. Families of victims, frustrated by years of limited transparency, have used the files to push for renewed civil lawsuits, criminal investigations, and legislative reforms. Many are calling for an end to statutes of limitations that previously prevented survivors from seeking justice, arguing that the law must evolve to protect the vulnerable and hold the powerful accountable. Yet the controversy continues. Some lawmakers accuse the Department of Justice of protecting powerful individuals by releasing names without context, creating confusion instead of clarity. Others push for additional unredacted disclosures, arguing that the public deserves complete transparency to understand the full patterns of behavior and connections. The tension between privacy and accountability remains a flashpoint, especially after sloppy redactions accidentally exposed victim identities, prompting renewed calls to protect survivors while still seeking justice. Civil lawsuits brought by Epstein's victims, which predate the 2008 deal and continued after Ghislaine Maxwell's 2021 conviction for trafficking, have added layers of legal complexity. These cases have helped expose more details about Epstein's financial operations, trust networks, and global movements, painting a picture of a man who operated with near total impunity for decades. The bigger question: power, privilege, and the failure of justice. Beyond the sensational names and the conspiracy chatter, the Epstein Files force a deeper societal reckoning. How do wealth, power, and access influence justice? Why did a plea deal that protected Epstein from a heavy sentence in 2008 ever occur? Why did his death happen under such mysterious circumstances? And how many doors to elite circles did his network really open? These are the questions prompting researchers, journalists, lawmakers, and ordinary people around the world to comb through millions of pages, urging truth, demanding accountability, and debating whether the files are finally revealing the full story, or if even more remains hidden in the shadows. The Epstein Files are more than a scandal. They are a mirror held up to society, reflecting the darkest corners of power, privilege, and the systemic failures that allow the powerful to evade consequences. The fight for justice is far from over, and the world is watching. This is Nexus 360, where we unpack stories that shape our world, challenge assumptions, and bring you insight beyond the headlines. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.